Hello, and welcome to Real Actors, Real Answers, the podcast where you are the star. Now, today, it's my show. Today, I'm going to interview someone who acted on their life because acting is life, life is acting. As you know from me and all of my coaching and everything else, you can't separate the two. Okay, if you do, then it's just a farce. So, her name is Amanda Standley, and she walked across America. That's what I said. If you don't understand, well, get to understand. We're going to talk to her. I want you to listen, and I want you to take notes because she did something that most people only think about or virtualize. Amanda Standley, how are you doing?
I'm doing very good, thank you.
Good. So you walked across America.
I did.
What's the trail called?
I loosely follow the American Discovery Trail. It's more of a route than a trail, but that was a guideline, and then eventually I completely left it, but it was a starting point for me.
Now, where does it start? The route. I love that word. It's not a trail. What's the
Mhm.
difference between a trail and a route?
Well, literally, when people think trail, it's like the dirt trails, but via this ADT, the American Discovery Trail, it's a lot of road walking. So that's why I say it's a route instead of a trail. But it starts in Cape Henlopen, Delaware, and officially finishes in Point Reyes, California.
Okay, Cape Canopen. Is that how you pronounce it?
Henlopen with a H.
Helopen. Okay, all right. Thank you. That's education in itself because I was messing it up big time. Um, so what caused you to say, "Hey, I'm going to do this"?
Yeah, so I actually didn't like have a lifelong goal of doing this. It was a point in time when I kind of had some adversity going on in my life, and I ended up on a friend's couch after getting a new job moving to Utah, and my van got totaled. So I was having a bunch of interesting dreams, and I woke up at like 3 a.m. one night. I was like, I wonder if there's a trail that goes across the United States. And I Googled it, and that's why I found the American Discovery Trail. And I was like, well, that sounds cool. I'd never do that, and went back to sleep.
So you had a dream about this.
Kind of, yeah. It's like I woke up with the idea or the curiosity.
And you weren't even thinking about this previously.
No, like I said, I just had a lot going on in my life, a lot of
That's like
transitions.
that's like biblical proportions. You had a dream. You had no idea where. It's like that's tapping you on the shoulder. It's wow. So you went back to sleep. Oh, that's silly. And
Mhm.
then now what proceeded from there?
Yeah, so in my mind at that point, I was like, I would never do that. That's, ridiculous. And at the point in time, I was working in wilderness adventure therapy. And about 3 months later, I had a student that part of this is relational building. So you talk about ambitions and goals. And so this kid, he looked to me and was like, well, what are your ambitions? What are your goals? And I was like, I had an idea a few months back about walking across the country. And he's like, do it. And I was like, yes, you're right. So it like flipped this little switch for me. And then I was kind of like dedicated to it after that.
That's all you needed.
Yeah.
Was that permission from? You said a student, so you're a teacher?
No, so I was a field guide. So it's you take adolescents out into the wilderness, and that's the therapy process. And so my job was the guide. I would facilitate the activities with my co-guides and then create that safe environment so that they could work out their therapeutic process.
What an amazing, it's not a job. What an amazing ministry. What an amazing calling. Wow. And you got paid for this?
Yes.
That's fantastic. You went to school for it?
No. My degree is in kinesiology, so that's the study of how the body moves. So there's layers that you use your body outside, but
The term is what? What?
kinesiology. So like
Could you
kinesthetics.
could you define that?
Yeah, so it's the study of how the human body works, and so it's similar to exercise science.
Kinetic memory. How you move and how you memorize your movements and
Yeah, it's biomechanics in a lot of ways.
okay. Easy for you to say. But you have an education in it. Okay. That's fantastic. when you first started, I'm going to try to be quiet and keep my excitement down, but when you first started, tell us about how you started and what did you have to do research on what you needed to pack, and because it's domestication and wilderness, you
Hmm.
know, how did you approach that?
Yeah, so I had an interesting approach. It was kind of more conceivable for me to like partly kind of corner myself into the idea, and be committed to it from that standpoint. So I actually was doing like soft skills research first, and so I partnered with a nonprofit to kind of help commit myself to this journey and make it larger than myself. And then the other parts was just like doing reading. There's different books about other people walking across the United States that I read. So I actually didn't do a full uh, like tests. They called them shakedown hikes or shakedown camping trips until a week before I started. So I had started in January of 2017, and it was the week for Christmas that I actually did a 5-day long backpacking trip by myself for the first time, and then also was camping like the winter for the first time by myself. And so it's a funny theme that I've kind of come upon, is that people that do these through hikes, a lot of them really don't have any experience. And so it's just this willingness to figure it out along the way. And for me, I made certain decisions to allow room for error as well. So I knew that I'd start on the East Coast versus the West Coast because there's more resources in the winter time and more people if I needed resources for help, or people to get in contact with. So things like that I kind of helped set in place, set me up for success.
You let me understand this correctly. You started at the West Coast, is that what you said?
East Coast.
Or East Coast, excuse me, because there's more. Oh, desert, and okay, I get it.
It's just in general more populated on the East Coast. So even when you're walking in between towns, like there's a house everywhere. And so that's actually what I used to in my advantage, is that I couldn't find like a source of water. I would knock on people's doors and just ask for water.
And
So
you get it?
yeah, it was actually a technique too for me in Kansas. Kansas was like a shifting point in how I was interacting with people, because that's when everything starts getting like 10 miles apart, like further distances. And each state has a little bit of their own personality. And so in Kansas, where I was at, I kind of ran into they were nice, but there's like standoffish. Like like the otherly, they're like kind of feeling you out before they'll be nice to you. And so I found a way of humanizing myself, and that was like asking for water. It breaks that barrier. I'm just like, yo, I'm not a scared person. I'm just doing this, and like, can I have some water?
Yeah, who's gonna say no, go away? It's like, yeah, if you explain yourself. Now, let's talk about food. How did
Mhm.
that work?
So a lot of that is just knowing where you're going to be in a couple days, and that's on this journey. You can only take it like day by day, couple days. Anything else, there's too many uh, variables that you can't predict. So it's like 2 days in advance, 3 days in advance, kind of know the direction you're going. And for me, my main source of like a grocery store was Dollar General, or those like family dollar chains. Yeah. And those
Okay.
are everywhere, like no matter the small town, like just one is randomly there. So that's how I'd resupply. And then at this time, especially on the East Coast, there were a lot of people that saw me walking on the road, or they'd meet me. And via this American Discovery Trail, there are trail angels, and so each state has a state coordinator, and so they try to keep track of who's walking the routes in those states, and so people would uh, find me and then help me host me. So then they'd also be feeding me too in those meals, so that kind of helped with alleviating some of that calorie deficit that I was experiencing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because you're walking. There's no,
Mhm.
that takes a lot more energy.
Yes.
How was tenting?
So also creative on the East Coast. So there's also not a lot of public land on the East Coast. So if I wasn't being hosted, I had a couple options. And so there's stealth camping, which is basically you're walking and you end up finding somewhere to camp in the woods that's on private property or somewhere you're not really supposed to be. So that you don't really get good night's sleep on that because you're just vulnerable. You know, you don't know what's going to happen or if you'll be discovered or so those are usually like you go to sleep in the dark, wake up in the dark to like not be seen. And then the alternative is that you knock on people's doors and ask to camp on their lawn. And so that worked out well. I had people tell me yes, I had people tell me no. Um, and yeah, and that was always nice because a lot of times too, then they would like, you know, they want to help the journey as well. So they might offer snacks or just want to talk to you, and that helps with that human interaction.
That's true. I mean, you describe it as it's an adventure,
Mm,
definitely, but you're talking about human kindness.
mhm.
That's still out there in the 21st century.
Absolutely. The life lesson there, it honestly it's interesting because you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable to the world in order for you to receive that. Like if you're being defensive, of course you're not going to receive the kindness because people see you being defensive and feeling threatened and that interaction like people pick up on. But if you're there allowing that vulnerability, then that's like an open door that allows opportunity.
The United States government should go by that. That's a beautiful truth. That's I'm an acting coach and a life coach. That's the whole key about acting with other people in front of
Mhm.
on a stage or in front of a camera, because like the Truman Show. You ever see the Truman Show? Okay, you're always on camera. Okay,
Right.
and it's like you said. I'll go back to you though. The vulnerability, people can sense it. The defensiveness, people can sense it, and they respond accordingly. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm waiting for your approval. Um, what was your favorite, most exciting, nervous, harrowing experience? Did you have one?
That's very broad.
I know
Like there's some
bears, tigers, lions. Oh my, anything?
you know the animals they don't really bother you. I mean, I did see a bear in Colorado, but it was like off in the woods as I was walking by and I saw it and I was like, that's not how a deer moves. And I like looked closer at it and then I was like, that's a bear. And then like you're supposed to, you know, do certain things, but I was like, let me get a picture of this. And you know, of course, I'm reading body language, and I could tell it knew that I was there, didn't really care, and it didn't look irritated. But I just like took a couple pictures and was like, "Hey, bear," and then just kept walking by. And then, so yeah, nothing too shocking there. And then in California, I saw a dead mountain lion on the side of the road. Yeah,
I saw that picture.
sure. Yeah, so I was like, oh, like they do exist out here.
What happened to you inside? I've seen many videos of other, trekkers, and they talk about like it's a spirit walk. It changes the way you think, the way you feel about life. It slows you down. Did you experience like a life change out there?
Yeah, and it happens very subtly. You don't really see it until you're finished. Um, all I can say is that you feel lost afterwards when you finish, but that change shifts. It's an unlearning. You start this walk with certain ideas, certain beliefs, and then you are forced to trust life. There's moments when it seems hopeless, when you're distraught, when you're hurting, you're in pain, and then you have these wonderful interactions with people. Like I developed like this full trust. I was like, I could be dying in the middle of wherever. And if it was deemed to be so, like someone would like ascend from mountaintops to like help me. Like I would just meet people in like snowstorms. I would meet people in just it's just crazy. I met people in the like 2,000 feet in Colorado in the mountaintops in the wilderness. And a lot of times it's interesting because it's like this mutual interaction where they show up and are helpful to you, but you show up and are helpful to them. And this isn't in like a materialistic way. It's like you enter people's lives, and whether it's inspiration, whether it's like a healing point or just whatever people need, it's like through that vulnerability, it's like that magnetic like resonance, like you interact with the people you're supposed to interact with. Just the trusting of all of that, it's you're like, I could die doing this. People tell me I could die doing this, but then you're like trusting, like it doesn't feel like I'm going to die doing this. And so it's like becomes this unseen world with this inner journey where people are looking at you like you're crazy, and that none of this makes sense, it's all illogical, but like you feel into it, you develop that intuition, you learn to trust life, and it catches you. But the learning curve is, it's like not always when we want to be caught, it's like truly when the need is there. And so it challenges your perceptions too of like, why is this happening to me? And then it's like, oh well, later on you're like, because it's happened, this other wonderful opportunity emerged, and you can look back and make those connecting points. You're in that little world, and then as soon as you're done, there's a thing called post-trail depression, and a lot of that just comes from you've had this ultimate goal you're working towards, you're putting your energy towards, and everyone's like, what next? And if you don't have something to continue putting that energy into, then you kind of flounder. And so for about 2 years after I finished, I was floundering. And you don't realize it either. You're confused. You don't feel like you belong in society anymore. And so you kind of go through this process of, for me, I was not able to work a normal job for like more than 3 months because I had learned my time was my time. Like I was like, I've lived on the outskirts of society and I've learned another way of living, and you can't close that door once it's opened. And so because of that, um, there's challenges, there's transitions. You've learned to live in a different world than what you're taught to live in, and you're then challenging the beliefs of other people around you too, and that people have a hard time with as well. Those are all like little snippets of it, but it has laid a foundation for me for what my life has become, and it definitely was like a walkabout for sure.
It's beautiful. Where do I go with everything you said? It sounds, it sounds like to me that you gave birth to yourself.
Yeah.
You had to dig deep. You had to find out one step at a time, literally, how to be vulnerable. Have you gone minimalistic ever since then?
The last 2 years I live out of a minivan. And so that has to do with other characteristics as well. I'm a backpacking guide, and part of that is I just really haven't found somewhere that I want to live, and then it's also matches just my lifestyle of guiding as well. So I have, from that point forward, it's my whole lifestyle is I do kind of just live outside. Like there's things, after I finished my walk, I had a very difficult time being indoors. The air was stagnant and I would feel trapped. Because outside you get used to the constant sensation of the cold air, the warm air, the wind blowing on you, the sounds of the leaves. And then you go into an indoor environment, and a lot of the senses are taken away.
So you feel claustrophobic?
Not claustrophobic, it's just like stagnancy. It's like you've once again another doorway opened of fully sensing the world around you, and paying attention to the weather, to just like the wildlife, things like that. And then it's not there, it's gone. So you're being stripped away of those senses that have been like opened up.
Strips away of the keenness, you mean, of the sharpness.
Mm-hmm.
When you went through, did you go through San Bernardino, like the rocky desert? Did you walk through there as well?
No.
Which way did you go? Because I know there's a northern route, more northern, more southern.
So via the American Discovery Trail, I did the southern route, which technically just goes through Kansas and it meets back up into Denver. But through the desert, I walked on, is it 80? I think I-80, the interstate, through Utah and Nevada. And so I was fully on the interstate.
Now, you did say at the beginning of this interview that you loosely followed the ADT. You went
Mhm.
off trail. How trail? You went off route. Where did you go off route?
Yeah, so I was loosely following it up to Denver, but what I realized is the American Discovery Trail itself is over 5,000 miles long. To get across the United States, it takes about 3,000 miles. And so it takes you to a lot of like scenic viewpoints and this and that, but it wasn't really designed as a backpacking trail. So what I found is that as you are following the trail, it takes you like 5 miles through the woods to put you down a mile down the road you were on. So there's a lot of waste of time and resources, and it's frustrating and can really be a safety issue. And because of that, you start looking at like more direct ways. And then getting into Denver, I started in southeastern Colorado and then went up to Denver. And then what the route wanted you to do was then go back south. And I was like, well, I just came from the south. I don't want to go back south. So I went ahead and was choosing how I wanted to go through the desert. And there's really only two ways of doing that. And that's either the interstate in the northern part or 50, which is like the loneliest highway in the country. It's like you get the extremes. You're on the interstate or you see no one and you're in a desolate situation. So between not wanting to go south, I also was choosing what I felt was like the best safety option was once again walking on the interstate. There's more resources, more chance of like also if I needed help or whatnot. And so yeah, that was part of like my choice in continuing to go north through, Utah, Nevada more so.
Did you now? I want to talk a little bit about your book too.
Hmm?
It's a great title, but I'm going to let you deliver it. Did you write as you were walking or after?
So I wanted to clarify with that book, which is Across America on Foot. I have an excerpt in it. It's actually the whole community of, I believe it's 27 stories or 27 people that have contributed to it. So it was a group collaborative effort, and then I got to submit a section to it, and that was from my website, my blog. I took a lot of that and then just redid it to fit more of a story context. But I journaled along the way, and then when I had stopping points, I would use people's computers to write the blog post. And from that point, that's what's on my website. And of course, across the country, it got more and more behind, which is why there's less written as I continued across the country. But
People let you use their computers?
people let me stay in their homes.
See, this is beautiful. It's fascinating. It's yeah, this is an amazing story. I love it. I got to say, like, there's one person I'm following right now. Perhaps you heard of him, the crazy, the crazy vet. He's on YouTube.
Not recently. I haven't.
After he finished the ADT, he said, "That's it. I'm done. It's all over." And then I caught him. Now he's doing the Appalachian. He didn't
Mm-hmm.
want to stop. He okay. I thought it was pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do now?
Yeah, so like I said, it took me a couple years to kind of find my footing, but I'm a vacation backpacking guide in North Carolina. So for my work now, as I take people either on lodge-based trips or backpacking trips, and I teach them skills for the camping or just do the interpretation, provide the knowledge of the area. And take them out into the woods and help them have a good time. So it's quite fitting, and it works well with the experiences that I learned from my walk. I really enjoy it because it gives me the opportunities to share these snippets of knowledge that I've gained to other people who, don't have the time or the desire to do these things. But that's like my little contribution to the world is, to bring these life lessons to life to help other people, and then also helping people remember like their inner child. And I'm just really facilitating the space for it, and the nature does the rest.
That's beautiful. And this is in North Carolina, correct?
Hmm.
Yeah, I love North Carolina. It's so beautiful. In fact, when I do the ADT myself,
Hmm.
I'm going to go off the route, and I just want to go. I know a couple of people in Georgia, a couple of people in North Carolina. I want to go down there.
Yeah.
Ever since I saw I'll just say that road in North Carolina, there's the ocean on one side, the inlet on the other. It's a beautiful area.
Hmm.
It escapes me the name of it, but um, I just fell in love with the people. The people are so relaxed and kicked back, and
Hmm.
yeah.
I will say an interesting thing that I found while I was like camping in people's lawns is that you're inherently are going to try to judge people who are going to help you and who are not. But it's you're never going to judge it correctly. There's a lot of people that you'd be like, based on these things they would help me, and then they don't. And then the people that usually have the least amount, they're the most giving. And so it's a fun thing to kind of see unravel.
You know what you did besides walking? You taught people as well as yourself to trust again.
Mhm.
That's like huge.
Absolutely. And I almost would say too is like, I don't know that I trust, or that I taught people to trust. They kind of taught me to, because me growing up in Dallas, you lock the doors. I didn't grow up knowing my neighbors. It's this thing that all these families and people were helping me along the way. And at the same time, I kind of knew that my parents wouldn't take someone off the street and invite them into their home. And so it taught me, and then inadvertently taught other people that were watching the journey too, about the process of trust. Because my mom at one point asked me, she's like, Amanda, why are people inviting you into their home? Why are you going into their home? I was like, I'm hungry and I'm cold.
And here you are, you're in one piece and you're healthy and happy.
Yeah, and it's going back to intuition, it's like I'm not blatantly like just, you know, trusting people, but it's like you have the vulnerability, you meet people, and then it's like you pay attention to the questions that they ask you, or how are they interacting with you. And then it's working both ways. You forget, but they're kind of assessing you too, and then you're kind of assessing them very subtly. And then from there, it's just kind of like the energetic interaction. People don't realize it, but it's the intuition that's coming out. And um, you don't always know why. You're like, I feel like I should help this person, but then it's just like, it's like they choose to follow that intuition themselves as well. And so yeah, I would say I learned a lot more about trust from the people, just allowing that open heart to flourish.
It sounds to me like you used that what you've studied in college, kinesiology. Is that how you pronounce it?
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, you could more readily assess with your education their body language, because body language is like 55% out of everything.
Yeah, that's not so much like the physicality of kinesiology, but my minor was medical anthropology, so that's sociology. So yes, that is in there.
Yeah. You're full
More
of
so,
wonderful surprises.
yeah, and the intuition and the body language, I'd say that's more so too from like the wilderness therapy. So there were some, you develop skills, and you just, there's little pieces I've picked up along the way that did help me in the journey. Yeah, it's been cool seeing how those things do come together.
If someone was going to walk the ADT, me, but other people as well, and you've covered quite a bit of ground, no pun intended. What's the first thing you would tell them about preparing themselves physically or mentally, or gear, for crying out loud? What kind of gear? And backpack or one of those. You had a
Sure.
backpack, didn't you?
I had a backpack most of the way, and then in Utah, you have to develop another plan. So through Salt Lake City, Utah to Reno, Nevada, I had a jogging stroller.
You have to have that?
You are traveling at least 100 miles between towns. So to carry enough water, you either have to empty your backpack to carry that much weight, or you have to get a jogging stroller. That's difficult, but yeah, you're traveling over 100 miles in between towns, so you have to figure out what your comfort zones are. So like any of these logistics, people have different comfort zones, and so you have to know yourself at that point too. Like, what are you comfortable maybe being a little bit riskier on, and what are you like really confident that like you can manage?
So where did you get the stroller? I have to ask.
Yeah, so once again, in the realm of meeting random people in different places, and people are going to help you on this journey. If you want to do it by yourself, like it's just a different journey. But overall, like whether you expect it or not, people are going to be helpful. And I used to live in Salt Lake City, so I had a friend there that they have a website that's similar to Craigslist, and so I got on there and was looking for jogging strollers and managed to buy one, and then used it all the way to Reno. And then another family that I stayed with, they helped me out and they actually sold it back, so I made my money back on it.
What a great adventure. That's
Mhm.
amazing.
Yeah, and you never know how it's going to unfold, but that's the trust, and there is like the full on like kind of like in certain ways you're like manifesting certain things down the line, but you don't really realize it until you look back and you're like, oh, did that happen because of this?
The power of reflection. Amanda, where would people find your book if, that they want to buy it, want to
Yeah,
purchase it?
it's on Amazon.
And what's it called again?
Across America on Foot.
Okay, Across America on Foot. I saw it and I've got to get it. I've just got to get it.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
it's really unique because all of it is only edited by the person that wrote it, so you have different styles in there, and then different, yeah, just how people formatted it. And yeah, so there's people that ran across, there's people that walked across, and it, what their reasons were for doing it, and just the little journeys they wanted to share as well.
so they shared their journey and you said, I'm going to I'm writing a book. And so they contributed.
It was not my idea. I came into the project.
I've always said, and you're a wonderful example of it. There's no such thing as independence. Because
Mm-hmm.
if there was, you could take your trash to the city dump. You could make your own gasoline. Yeah, on and on it goes. You're interdependent,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like internet. You're woven in together, and you're woven to such a degree where even subconsciously you take it for granted that there's this available, there's that resource, there's this people. But then when you go and do what you did,
Mm-hmm.
you're tested.
Yeah.
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 Um, so one more question. This has been delightful and intriguing and exciting. Where can people find you?
Yeah. My website is dancingwiththedirt.com. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well. And so, yeah, my future journeys, which I'm working on documenting and writing as well for, is I've begun mountaineering. So, and that's a little bit more of a different type of ambitious journey, but Um, but yeah, so in the near future, I hope to start adding more of those adventures to my website as well.
Beautiful. I got to say, I've been reading your blog. It's very well written, edited. It's just, and I can visualize everything,
Mm-hmm.
that you're writing. You're a very good writer.
Thank you.
Now, I want everybody to look her up, Dancing with the Dirt. Oh, by the way, how did you come up with that? I told my brother that yesterday. I was interviewing, you, and he goes, because he's a writer too, he's an author, and he said he has that quizzical look, oh wow, how did you come up with that?
Um, I just took time to, this was part of the making the journey larger than myself. And I kind of was just brainstorming with different ideas of like what to kind of create this adventure into, or like how to, just make it larger than myself. So it just took a few days or weeks, and I was just brainstorming ideas, and I eventually kind of came up with that.
One more question. How did you feel? I mean, it's on your website, and I saw the clip, but you threw your walking, your trekking poles here and there, and you danced to the, how that brought tears to my eyes. How did you feel when you hit that water?
Yeah, so it's actually it's a very interesting thing, is that at the end, my parents and two friends of mine came to witness my finish. And I actually did the last mileage to the beach and then sat at the picnic table for a while because my mom had gone to get butcher paper so they could make the sign that you see in the video. And so
Okay.
I was sitting there while they were off to the side, like designing this and coloring it and doing this whole thing. And I was just like, it's like the enrichment from like the human interaction and those opportunities is really what the whole journey was about. It wasn't like, let me get to the ocean. Like the ocean's the ocean, it's there. And so when they were finally done with doing their designs and drawings, it wasn't staged, but they like set up the banner for me to run through. And so I did, and that was just me being me.
Yeah, it was great. I loved it.
But yeah, the feeling of it is just like, it was elation and joy, but it's also like I didn't have this like fulfilled feeling though either at the end of it. I was just like, all right, like I'm here. It's just a new beginning. It's like this is an end into a new beginning, and then you kind of get caught in this space where everyone is then immediately like, well, what's next? What are you gonna do next? And you're just kind of like, it's like, oh, gosh, I don't know. I've been taking life like 2 days at a time for the past 8 months. So yeah, it wasn't like this, I'm invincible. It was just kind of like, all right, cool. Now I have to figure out what I'm doing tomorrow.
Understood. You are the perfect example of something that I teach to my students as well as to myself every day. Literally, life is a journey and not a destination.
I have a funny story with that actually too.
Okay, please share.
Through Ohio, there's this state park I walked through, and there's a cave called Old Man's Cave at the state park. And a woman that hosted me, she was walking with me for like the first couple miles of the day before we parted ways. And we're like, where is this old man's cave? Like we walked from like one point to like another point. And we're like, where is this old man's cave? And eventually we're like, we're in it. We're in the old man's cave. And
You
so that
didn't
was,
even.
yeah, it's like that was the lesson. It was just like the destination was always there. We were just on the journey and didn't know where, the destination.
Wow, what you just said. Could you repeat that last sentence?
That we were in the journey, and or I can't repeat it.
I understand that you get that epiphany and it's gone. It's like the butterfly, where'd it go?
Yeah,
This is recorded, so it'll be there. It's
yeah.
just beautiful language. Beautiful
Mm.
language. You're a beautiful person. And
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. And thank you for being on Real Actors, Real Answers. And it's been a privilege to listen to you and to listen to your journey. I can't wait to read your book.
Mhm. Yeah, my pleasure for being on here. Thank you for reaching out.
You're welcome. Enjoy your day and your
Thank you.
journey.
Thank you. You as well.